Welcome to Politics for Happy People. So glad that you're with us. Ashley, happy summer.
Happy summer. How's it going for you?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I don't know that I want to get into that, frankly. Is this therapy time? I think we're supposed to do a show. I mean, it's going well. It's going well.
It doesn't sound
Kind
like
of.
it.
No, it is. I mean, there's a lot going on in life, and people did not tune into this today to listen to all of my personal drama. But
Life
there's
is
a lot
busy.
going on.
Life
Yeah.
is busy.
Life is busy. Life is full. It's largely good. I'm grateful for my problems, but there's still things going on. So it's good.
I had
Yeah.
the best
Kids are.
quintessentially summer day yesterday with my kids.
You did.
We
Tell us.
did nothing.
Oh.
We did nothing all day. We sat around the house and we played cards and relaxed. And to me, that's summer. You don't have anything on the calendar. You can go to the pool if you feel like it.
Yeah.
Or if you don't, just hang out and be with the people you love.
That is, those feel like they're rare summer days. And, my kids are a little older than yours now. And I mean, I got home from work yesterday and I never even saw my son because he was just asleep. He'd been at the lake with some friends and they just slept. So they didn't do anything either, it seems. But I did plenty. We're working because, frankly, a lot is happening still in the state legislature.
Yeah.
And for people who don't know, the North Carolina General Assembly continues to do their thing. I think they are the only active legislature in America still. The schedule here is very different, and so they will go through summer, and there were a lot of hope that people, they might be out before the 4th of July. Increasingly, there's some doubt about that, but we really don't know. But we're going to talk about some of the things that they are talking about right now, and some of them may be more serious than others. I want to talk about DEI because the Senate overrode, or the House yesterday overrode some vetoes from Governor Stein that we'll talk about. We're also getting a sad story that is really relevant to some things we're working on here, where a young lady in high school has accused a young man of sexually assaulting her during a wrestling match because he was identifying as a female and allegedly did some terrible things during a wrestling match. So that's kind of our show for today. But the first thing I want to get into is probably not something we would necessarily always be talking about, like baseball stadiums. But Ashley, one of the are you a baseball fan?
We've gone over this.
We've talked
I'm
about other
not
sports
into
that you're not
sports.
into. You're not
No.
into any sport.
No.
Okay.
Basically, no.
Do you know what baseball is?
do.
Okay. Do you know it? Do your boys play baseball yet? Do they play that game?
No.
Okay.
So that's the only sport my kids haven't played
It's baseball.
is baseball. Yeah. Well, we did t-ball.
Okay.
We did t-ball.
It's miserable, isn't it?
My son was so young. It was actually,
I.
it was fun. It was very cute. He hit the ball and started running and never stopped. Ran on to another field where some teenage boys were playing and promptly got flattened.
During the course of his game.
Oh, yeah. Because he ran off of his field into the other field where
must have been pretty
teenagers
close.
were. No, it was pretty far.
He just kept going.
Well, I was pregnant,
Okay.
so I couldn't catch him.
Well-
But anyways, yes, baseball. Tell me about the
Well,
stadiums.
Yeah, the stadiums, and I'll say to that point that I agree. I think T-ball and little people playing baseball is so miserable because they don't understand the game. They don't really have any skill. It's just kind of like recess, where it's slightly organized, just like playtime, right? And I did not enjoy that. So my kids played a lot of sports very early on, but I discouraged them from playing baseball early on. And as a result of that, perhaps nobody played baseball when they got bigger. But I played a lot of baseball growing up. I like baseball. Why are we talking about it right now? Because most people know that there has been a delay in passing a budget in North Carolina. Haven't had one for a while. And one of the new issues is whether the state should spend money for a Major League Baseball stadium in Raleigh. And
In Raleigh.
Well, we think in Raleigh. Yes. I mean, there's a lot I don't know about this, but I now know this seems to be an issue of discussion in the legislature. Should taxpayer funds go to a baseball stadium? Ashley, what's your first reaction to that?
It sounds like more of a private enterprise to me, but I think I would have to hear the reasons behind why it
Yeah.
would promote some sort of public good.
Well, the public good that it would promote, and the reason why this is actually quite common all over the country for cities to partner with major league sports franchises, is because there's massive economic development when you have a major league baseball team. So if it, Raleigh or Charlotte or any other city in America, major league baseball teams have 82 home games. When you build a stadium, you have, of course, hotels and restaurants and spin-off industries and businesses that result from that. And so there is unquestionably economic activity that is generated when you have a major league baseball or major league sports franchise. And I think part of the reason maybe this is happening now is that we all know the Canes just won the Stanley Cup. And
much
there's a lot of
joy.
There's much joy and fanfare in Raleigh and around the region and around the state. And Tom Condon, who's the owner of the Hurricanes, was asked specifically about Major League Baseball. He's been kind of part of some conversations about the idea of bringing Major League Baseball to North Carolina. Perhaps some people think this is the moment to seize the day, to leverage public enthusiasm for that. And so maybe there would be an appetite for spending some taxpayer dollars to help incentivize a professional sports franchise to come to...
Because the Canes are the only major sports team that we have, right?
Well, Duke and North Carolina basketball would disagree with that.
Professional,
Actually professional.
Yes, professional, yeah.
Those are... All those players are now being paid, so they are professional. Well, yes, your point is taken. In major league teams, baseball, football, hockey, what did I just leave out? Basketball, right? Yeah. Raleigh only has a hockey team. Of course, North Carolina, through Charlotte, has a football team and also a basketball team there, but there is no baseball team in the state of North Carolina, and that is presumably the thing here that would be addressed. So, I mean...
What do you think? Do you think
I'm a sports fan.
Public funds should go to that?
The principle
all the men
to
are
me,
saying yes.
Well, kind of, but not all the men are saying yes, right?
Yes,
because if you live in the mountains, do you want taxpayer dollars? And you're 4 hours away from Raleigh or Charlotte. Do you want taxpayer dollars being used to incentivize? And again, who are we incenting? People who are already probably billionaires, because those are the only people talking about owning Major League Baseball teams and building stadiums. So these are not poor people. They do not have like a lack of access to resources, but nobody's going to turn down $600 million, $500 million if it's offered to you, including billionaires, which is why they do this. So like, if you want our economic activity, if you want my investment, why don't you invest too? We'll do this thing together. I'll own the team. That'll benefit me as a billionaire, and this will benefit you as a state, because there's going to be all sorts of economic activity for you. I think that's the argument. And it's a defensible one. But then the principle is it wrong for taxpayer dollars, and we're talking people who are not billionaires, right? You take taxes from very normal people, and now we're going to use your tax dollars to go to somebody else under the theory that it's going to generate other economic activity that'll benefit you.
Yeah, I think it sounds to me it's a private enterprise situation. I don't know that I think tax dollars should go to that, but I understand the debate. I do.
Well, and here's the free market response to the fact that it is unquestionably a private enterprise thing, right? The state government is not going to own part of a Major League Baseball team. But the reality is, other markets, you're competing with them for this kind of economic activity, right? And so if you are a state or a city that says, I will give you nothing, and then Nashville's like, hey, we got $500 million for you. Why don't you come to us, right? That is quintessential competition. It just so happens that the government is involved in that competition. And should we care? Should we, on principle, say, hey, we're not going to use we're not going to use taxpayer funds to subsidize your professional sports franchise, and therefore we are going to forego the economic activity and stimulus that would result from that. And that is governments, states competing with each other. So that is competition. And so I can't decide if that's a kind, on one hand, yeah, that's just the market at work. But on the other hand, it's the government going places where it should not go.
Yeah. Seems like we can stimulate the economy by taxing people less.
Well, yes. I mean,
so there are other ways to stimulate the economy except through sports. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. We're not going to spend our whole show on this, but it's a thing going on in Raleigh right now where that apparently is a discussion. I have a feeling that the Stanley Cup championship won by the Canes, or the Stanley Cup trophy won by the Canes, is part of that conversation. So will they resolve this? Will it be a sticking point? Will it be a reason that the budget continues to be delayed? No one knows. At least I don't. Somebody probably knows. I don't know. But I think it's worth thinking about. And hey, I think baseball would be fun. But not
all right.
anything.
So
Anyway,
another thing that's happening down there at the General Assembly,
yes.
they overrode 2 DEI bills yesterday.
3, in fact.
3.
3.
Okay. And you were there. Tell me about it.
Well, DEI, and everybody kind of understands this to be a controversial subject. There were 3 bills. One that eliminated DEI in K through 12 education in the state. Another that eliminated DEI in higher education, and of course public higher education in the state. And then another that eliminated DEI in state agencies. So,
Okay, that was the one I was missing. Okay.
yes.
State
And so
agencies.
2 in education, higher ed, lower ed, and then 1 in the state agencies. And the background on these bills is that the legislature passed them. Governor Stein vetoed all of them. And in North Carolina, you can override the veto with 3/5 of both chambers. The House has 1 vote. The Republicans have 1 vote short of a 3/5 majority. And so they have to get Democrats to vote with them, or, as happened in this case, 2 Democrats, Carla Cunningham and Shelley Willingham, disappeared for a while. And here's some political intrigue. The background is, in recent years, Shelley Willingham and Carla Cunningham have voted with the Republicans to override some vetoes. And they were primaried by the Democrats this year. Both of them lost their primary, which means neither of them are going to be on the general election ballot in November. They are done as representatives. And they have also declared themselves to be independents. No. Are they the ones? Because Majid did as well, right?
Yes.
I think only 2 of those 3 actually declared
I
themselves to be
believe Cunningham
unofficial.
and Majid.
And
did.
Majid. So Shelley
that's right.
Willingham is still officially part of the Democratic caucus, we think. Whatever the case is there, right? They are on the outs with the Democratic caucus for sure, because they were all
Right.
challenged and they lost in their primary. So yesterday in the General Assembly, everybody's there kind of doing their thing. Both of them were present for the Rules Committee meeting that happened earlier in the day. And then when they had their floor session in the afternoon, incredibly, they were not present. And what did their absence mean? It meant that there were enough Republicans on the floor relative to the Democrats to achieve the 3/5 majority you need in the vote to override the veto. So their absence created an opening for the Republicans, which they seized upon. Now, I do not know, but I highly suspect that their absence had been coordinated. They probably received something for it. Maybe they just received political revenge against the caucus that has unseated them. Maybe that's what's going on. I don't know for sure. Or maybe there was something else that they got legislatively. But they were absent. And because they were absent, the Republicans in the House overrode the veto. It'll now go to the Senate.
So let's back up a tiny bit. These are 3 DEI bills. So how do the bills define DEI, and what exactly are they stopping from happening in the schools and in the state agencies? Just a high level.
Well, it's a great question. It prohibits in education, quote unquote, divisive concepts. And it says you cannot teach somebody that they are better than somebody else because of their race. You cannot teach somebody that they are a victim because of their race. You can't teach that one person bears responsibility for the behavior of other people who are part of their, race, identity group, whatever that is. And so this is the challenge for me with anti-DEI bills. because it's basically saying, don't say harmful things to your children under the auspices of DEI. But I'm not sure you can actually accomplish that legislatively. And the comparison that comes to mind for me is like, if a school said, thou shalt not teach Christianity in a school, and in some ways they basically have, but you're a teacher who really believes in like generosity and respect and kindness, are you going to remain committed to those ideas and still teach your children, even if you don't teach like the theology of redemption and salvation? Are you still going to teach ideas that you believe to be Christian and required of us because they're good for us?
Yes.
I think the answer to that is yes, right? As a teacher, even though the law says don't teach Christianity, and the reason I believe we should love each other is because of Christianity, I'm still going to teach my kids to love each other, even if there's a law that says don't teach Christianity. So I think the same kind of thing happens that if you have a teacher in a classroom who is fundamentally committed to the principles of DEI in terms of we must have a level playing field, the critical theory, there are oppressors and there are the oppressed, and we have to make sure that the oppressed get opportunities, even if it's at the expense of the oppressors. If you believe that, you might like change the branding, but you're still going to fundamentally teach that ideology, and you might just call it something else. That's what I'm concerned about.
Well, and that's what we've seen happen around the country in places where DEI offices have been banned. They still have the offices, they just change the name.
They rebrand
and carry on. So do you think that these three bills are going to make a difference? Do you think they're going to change anything?
I have to think yes. And again, this is assuming that the Senate overrides the vetoes, and that's much more likely than the House. And I think we can expect that to happen.
Yes.
Are they going to make a difference? I think it's more likely in state agencies that they will make a difference, because what they're not going to have is those training programs that basically you go in and you learn that all white people are racist, or the hiring quotas that have officially existed in the agencies when they're hiring people. So that kind of thing, I think, will necessarily go away. And when this is in law, I think people who kind of are in agencies as employees and they discover that something like this is happening, they will report it, and there will be some kind of recourse because there will actually be a law in place saying you cannot do that. So I have to think there will be some impact, especially in the state agencies and schools. They'll be cautious. I mean, because again, the leverage that the state would have is, hey, if you're doing this, you're going to lose your state funds. And local educators in schools and school boards, superintendents are going to be nervous about the prospect of losing their funds. So I think they're going to care about it. Yes. But I'm also very confident that there are plenty of teachers inside the system who are just going to get creative and say, oh, it's not DEI, but of course I'm teaching equity.
I think one of the big impacts is going to be culturally. And, thinking back to 2020 and before that, the idea that if you pushed back against DEI and those concepts at all, you were called racist. And so a lot of people were scared to push back against some of these ideas and to say anything, even if they didn't agree with it. And so I think now that we have these laws in place, I think it helps open up the conversation and for people to challenge that dogma that was kind of pushed down people's throats in different settings like schools and employment places.
What do you think of when somebody says DEI?
I think of a really bad solution to a real problem.
What does that mean in practice for you? Is there something specifically that comes to mind when somebody says DEI, you're like, this is where my mind goes?
I think of just sort of create inclusion like with these hiring quotas, with these sort of statements that people are supposed to adhere to, I repent of my whiteness, things,
Land
even if it's not,
acknowledgements.
well, even if
Yeah.
it's not specifically that's sort of the message, right? Like, I feel sorry for what people that look like me did. And I think those things are they're bad solutions to a real problem. Racism is a problem. It can happen from any group, whether no matter what group it is, there can be people who have racist feelings, and the solution is not DEI policies. It is not.
Well, your description of what DEI is, of course, if we ask somebody else that, they would have a very different answer, what they think of. And people on the left just see it as basically like character development. And we're just going to make sure that people understand how important inclusion and kindness are. That's what they understand DEI to be. And so part of the debate over this is our understanding of the facts and what DEI even means in practice are so different that we have very different responses. It's like the whole idea of, critical race theory. Like some people think critical race theory is simply acknowledging that racism exists and it's a problem. And some people think critical race theory is an actual like academic form of Marxism. So how you answer that question, what is this thing, has everything to do with whether you think it's a good thing or whether you think it's a bad thing. And I think, just from watching the floor debate over these veto override votes yesterday, it's very clear that there is not an understanding. I mean, because there are people on the left who think this is essentially, we're just basically going back to segregation when you eliminate racial quotas and classes that specifically teach kind of Marxist critical theory ideas about race. And that there are conservatives there are black conservatives and there are a lot of white liberals, right? It transcends ethnicity even. It's just, what do we understand this thing to be? And our different answers to that question, I think, inform the debate tremendously.
Yeah, I think that's true. We're definitely at odds in how we think about these concepts, how we think about DEI. I would say it's not about kindness and inclusion, though, because what they're specifically advocating for is going beyond that. And I can't think of a better way of saying it right now than just like special treatment or like some kind of accommodation or provision for the past injustices. That's where we are. That's where we're not meeting, because they would say we need to go beyond just kindness and inclusion because of these past bad things that have been done against this specific group. Whereas we would say we do owe kindness and inclusion to everyone, but we don't need to go past that.
Right. And the difference is, and I think it's worth repeating, though we've talked about it here before, it's the DEI advocates would advocate for inequality in outcome. And the right generally, and this represents me for sure, would advocate for equality of opportunity, that everybody should have the same chances. The law should officially disadvantage no one, but we should not guarantee that there will be equality of outcome across different demographics. Asian people, white people, Native American people, black people. And that's DEI generally measures success by, are these groups having the same results? And the answer to that sociologically and across, economically in lots of ways is unequivocally no. And the rebuttal to that argument from them would be, well, that's because historically we have been so disadvantaged, so we are still suffering the consequences of that. And I think that's actually true. I think that it's real, that the experience of your or my grandparents is different than the experience of other people's grandparents, and that influences our life. I just think that's a historical reality.
But there are a lot of factors besides race that can impact that too.
Of course. And the question is, what's the just way to respond to that now? Is the just thing, because undoubtedly, our lives are affected by what was happening with our grandparents, and other people's lives are affected by what's happening in their grandparents. Does that mean that you and I should be obligated to transfer wealth or transfer opportunity or, specifically back away because our situation might have advantages that other people. And I would argue that that is itself its own kind of injustice. And you cannot. When does that game end? How far back in history do you go? At some point you have to kind of look forward.
We're all born into a situation. We're all given a lot in life, but we do care about justice. And I'm very thankful that we live in a country that has come so far in terms of under the law, recognizing discrimination based on race is bad and ensuring that people are treated equally under the law.
And I think I'll end this conversation by saying I think it's important to note that the goals of the left and the right I actually think are very, very similar. That we generally all want the same thing. We want people to have great opportunities. We want their families to be successful. We want them, our neighbors, regardless of ethnicity or racial identification or gender, we want people to be successful and happy and fulfilled in their lives. The question here between, the DEI advocates and then the non-DEI advocates is what is the best way to achieve that? Is the best way to achieve that by highlighting and emphasizing and prioritizing our various identity categories, or by minimizing our various identity categories and saying you are an individual, you have autonomy, you have agency, you have great opportunity here in America, go seize it, but it's on you? Or is it, hey, you're an American, but you're also this gender and this sexual orientation and this ethnicity, and so we're going to give you points, or we're going to, you're going to get oppression points or privilege points based on that, and the government's going to try to officiate that to make sure the outcomes are the same. And those who take that perspective, I think they kind of want the same things. It's just the way they're going about it, in my judgment, are not productive and won't succeed.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm ultimately I'm happy that the eliminating DEI programs are succeeding. I have some questions about, I'm confident there are still people in the system who are going to continue pushing these values because it ultimately is a worldview and it's a value system. But I think it's good. I think it's progress.
Yeah.
What do we got next?
All right, moving along, we have to look at a very concerning case that came to my attention last week, I believe. So in Washington State, there was a 15-year-old female wrestler named Kaylee Keeler who was sexually assaulted during a girls' wrestling match by a male opponent that she was wrestling, who she did not know was male when she went to the mat to wrestle him. This actually happened in December of 2025, but we're hearing about it now because a lawsuit has been filed. So this took place at a girls wrestling tournament that was sanctioned by the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. So it was within her school system.
WIAA. That's just the public school athletic system.
That's exactly.
And by the by, I think everybody knows I'm from Washington State.
Yeah.
My niece was a high school wrestler.
Okay.
I kind of have questions about girls wrestling in general, but at this point, it's by the by. It doesn't really matter because, it's a sport.
So the policy in this district actually explicitly prohibits notifying parents or athletes when a girl is supposed to be matched against a male opponent.
Because that's Washington, right? It's the political leadership there and the school system is all in on the trans stuff. And so they are working very hard to make sure that boys who identify as girls can do absolutely anything they want. And in this case, specifically writing rules that say you do not have to disclose your maleness when you decide you want to wrestle as a female.
So the more you read about this, the more disturbing it becomes. Her mom was actually present in the gym watching and video recording this wrestling match.
Which is, of course, very common.
Right. Like for performance reasons.
Yeah, everybody records their kids doing sports.
Exactly. And the video I have watched, it's online. I'll be honest, it's really upsetting to watch because Kaylee looks visibly distressed and she's calling out to her mom, who's videoing it and telling her mom what's happening to her.
In the course of the match?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I'm not going to say specifically what she's saying, but she's describing what is happening to her body physically. And when I say this was a sexual assault, it was a true, violent, very, very, how do I even describe this? It wasn't just that he was, touching her buttocks or something. It was much, much further than that. It's disturbing and very upsetting to read about what happened to this young woman's body on the wrestling mat in front of her mother and her coaches, everyone else who was present. What happened to her body? I can't believe it.
Just to understand the facts, most people have probably seen a high school wrestling match, right? And so it is very physical. Wrestlers are very much in contact with each other because that's the nature of the sport. But there are certain things that you don't have to do in the course either of a wrestling match. Places you do not have to put your hands on particular bodies in order to try to manipulate your opponent, which is what you do in the course of competition, and everybody expects that. And so, use your imagination. We're trying to keep this to be a family show, right. But we are.
This is something that could not have happened by accident. It's not.
Though. That's and that
this
is
could not have happened
right.
by accident. This is.
If this is the kind of thing that would happen just in the course of a wrestling match, no one would wrestle because no one would consent to it.
Yeah.
But,
so they reported this in writing to the school immediately, and there's a mandatory 48-hour reporting requirement that the school is under, and they did nothing for 53 days. They did not report this to the police.
They have a 48-hour reporting requirement, after a wrestling match?
For sexual assault.
Oh, just for sexual. Okay, we're talking within the criminal code. You only have 48 hours to report a sexual assault.
Schools are mandatory reporters of sexual assault.
So the athlete reported to the school,
yes.
and the school has 48 hours
yes.
to report. And they did. Okay. So the athletes, because if you are a victim of sexual, what I thought I heard you say is you only have 48 hours to say something to the authorities.
No,
that's
not true. The school. Yeah. Sorry if I said that incorrectly.
The school must report within 48 hours, and that's what they did not do.
Yes.
So there's potential criminal liability for this male wrestler who was identifying as a girl, and certainly the school did not uphold their duties in this case, and it's not hard to imagine.
Well, the officials are the ones getting sued, the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association.
Do you know if there has been criminal charges pressed against this boy identifying as
I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that question.
So, but what we're talking about here is a lawsuit against the school itself for failing to report, failing to protect, all of the above.
Yeah. And this policy of not notifying the parents or the wrestler that they are going to be wrestling someone of the opposite gender, not telling the girl that you're about to wrestle a boy.
And that honestly is and so they've sued the WIAA,
mm-hmm.
the school also their specific high school, because the WIAA would have prohibited the school from making this disclosure, because their rules would say you cannot know, the athlete does not have to disclose this, the school does not have to know this, and probably the school would be prohibited from saying it even if they knew that. But what they're not prohibited from doing is reporting a sexual assault when they learn that somebody has been sexually assaulted, and that's what they did in this case. And it's not difficult to understand that the reason why they probably couldn't get around to reporting a sexual assault is because it was a protected class that was being accused of this, and they thought that was going to make them transphobic.
Well, evidently they didn't do anything until the mother took the story to the media. And
that's usually that, how many times have we seen that here in North Carolina recently, right? Where we have bad things happening at school. They go talk to their principal, and the principal's like, don't worry about it. It's just a boy in the girls' bathroom. It's not a big deal, or there's nothing we can do. They feel uncomfortable. Oh, here, young lady, here's your restroom you want to use if you're uncomfortable with the boys in your bathroom. And the only recourse that parents and families have is to go to media who will elevate the story so the public can become outraged because the people supervising these situations aren't.
Yeah.
It is sadly kind of the pattern that has developed. And I think there's a couple things to learn from this is parents and students, you have to be courageous and you have to advocate for yourself, because when you advocate for yourself, you're also advocating for other people so it doesn't happen to them. And also, adults in the room, you need to change the policies so these things can't happen anymore. And that's what we're working on.
And you need to be brave and stand up for what's right. I just feel so many people are cowering because they're being afraid. They are afraid of being called a bigot.
And that is the leverage. No, that's the whole that's the whole game right there. This high school in Washington, the ones we've seen in throughout North Carolina. Why do the adults not report sexual assault? Because they're afraid of being called names, being called transphobic, or being called bigoted. That's it. And so that accusation against them is the reason why they just, don't do the decent thing.
So this situation would not have happened in North Carolina. We have a law here that prevents boys from playing in girls' sports. Right. This is a 2023 law that NC Values, our organization, worked really hard on. And we're so thankful to people like Peyton McNabb. Mm-hmm. Peyton's an athlete from North Carolina who also suffered injury while playing against a male athlete. She had a volleyball spiked in her face and had lasting repercussions from that. And, a lot of people that have been working on this issue, like us, our friends, mm-hmm. have been saying girls are going to get harmed. Girls are going to get harmed. Now we have a girl who has been sexually assaulted in the midst of males being allowed to participate in female sports. That is something that I could not have I never would have thought of this.
Yeah,
I never would have imagined that. That was never an argument. Keep boys out of girls' sports so girls don't get sexually assaulted in the midst of a wrestling match. I mean, but when order breaks down and you're in a chaotic and frankly evil situations like this, these cases come out and you start to see what becomes possible. When nature is disregarded, essentially.
We talk about this often in terms of fairness, right? And we've probably all made jokes about the male identifying as a female basketball player who dominates his community college league because he's 6'7", right? And so he's like the leading rebounder. He's all league, and it's a dude playing basketball against women. So obviously he's doing pretty well. And the male identifying as a female weightlifter. It's not fair because he's bigger. He's a man. He went through male puberty, and now he's just competing against the women and setting all these records, right? That's just a fairness issue. When we're talking in volleyball, you hit the ball a little bit harder, and that maybe even is a health risk. But in wrestling, in that context, that's a totally different ball game. It's not just he can bench press more than she can. It's now he's in a position
his
and
hands can be all over her body.
And my goodness, and that is very different. So we talk about this often in fairness as a fairness issue, and it is. But when applied to this context, it's much more than a fairness issue. Certainly he had a competitive advantage as well, but it was much more than that. And this is a really tragic outcome. We shouldn't be shocked, though. It's just a reminder of why it's so important to be vigilant.
In the coming days, the Supreme Court is going to decide about this issue and it's going to have, nationwide implications. So you're an attorney, Joseph. If the Supreme Court, in this case it's BPJ, West Virginia.
Yes, it's a sports case out of West Virginia.
Yes, so BPJ is a boy claiming a transgender identity, and he challenged the law in West Virginia, much like North Carolina's law, prevents biological males from competing in female sports in schools. And so he challenged that law, And it's gone all the way up to the Supreme Court, and they're going to answer the question of whether states may have these laws.
That's right. That decision will be released by the end of this month. By the end of June, we will, and we expect that the Supreme Court will come down on the right side of this issue and say that Title IX, in fact, prevents a state from allowing boys to compete with girls.
So that was my question for you, Joseph. What are the implications for Washington State of this Supreme Court decision?
If the BPJ case comes down the way we think it will, the current law in Washington State will be found to be illegal because Title IX says that boys and girls sports are separate and that he's not a girl. And so that he can't do that anymore, even if the activists who are in charge of most things in Washington State want him to. That's a violation of Title IX at the federal level. Supremacy clause, federal law supersedes state law, and therefore, you just have to deal with it in Washington. Even if it makes you sad, the boys can't wrestle the girls. And that is frankly the expected decision. It's certainly the hoped for decision, but we're going to know in days.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's thank God for the Supreme Court, man, because of all of our institutions, it is the thing that has preserved our sanity through some really, really trying times. So
wild times.
Go to law school, kids, and get on the Supreme Court because you can save civilization. That's right.
Oh, man.
So good news to come. Be in prayer for this, as always, for our country and the 250th coming up. Be grateful for that. And but, of course, there's always work to do because we are not a quite perfected union, but hopefully we're getting better by the day. And significantly, hopefully we are doing our part to make it better by the day.
Right.
That's right. So thanks, friends, for being with us today. So good to have you with us. Reminder, new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. Like and subscribe where you found us because that helps us make new friends, including you. We'll see you next time here on Politics for Happy People.